Put that in your hat and call it macaroni, motherfucker.
Can do, bud.
Hey everybody, it's Tuesday, November the 1st, 2017, and this is the Fourth and Wrong podcast. I'm RJ, and with me as always is Keith. Say hi, Keith.
Hi, Keith.
Why you gotta be like that?
You don't...
I'm trying to start out
Look,
like...
Okay, you can start out as positive as you want. You win in football games, okay? So...
Okay. It's true.
So until we get to a point where I have something to be excited about, which I'm not saying I don't, because I have some things to be excited about, at least.
Something just happened.
Something just happened. That's pretty exciting. But it doesn't help us in the immediate, and I'm just... words.
There's certain times in editing where I don't know if I should cut out the exasperated pauses, because a lot of times I leave them in just to make sure that the point gets across. But a lot of times I'm like, I don't know if that's like a pause of him actually thinking or a pause of all the words getting crowded behind his teeth and not being able to come out at the same time because he's gritting them through so much anger.
Yeah, that one was definitely the latter. So you can hang on to that one. So where are we starting today, RJ?
Well, we can go one of two ways. If you really want to start getting this right off your chest, we can go straight to the Browns, or we can take a left-hand turn and switch it up a little bit at the beginning.
Nope, but switch it up.
Just a little
What
bit.
are we doing?
Just, before, but we basically jump to the headlines now because it's going to come up a bunch of different times.
Yeah, we can do that because part of the things I need to vent about are relevant to the headlines.
Okay.
So I'm totally cool
Well,
with that.
yeah. I figured that.
Yeah.
So let's talk about what you'll want to talk about eventually, or be mad about, I guess, more accurately, is it was the trade deadline this week.
Yeah. Okay. I blame the league for having their trade deadline at such an arbitrary time.
Uh-huh. It's almost like you have the whole year up to this point to make a trade.
Shut up, man.
Just...
I don't even know what's going on right now. It's like
Also, before we go any further, recognize that like the trade deadline is never this busy.
Yeah, no, this is easily the busiest trade deadline I've ever seen.
Like a lot of times it just kind of comes and go. Like forget like any amount of big name players, getting swapped around. It's usually like people getting stolen off of practice squads, or like the occasional big thing.
Yeah, or you'll see like a third stringer dumped for like a fifth or sixth round pick or something, like just to like get some depth on somebody. But these were like marquee trades. People are building up for that last 8-game push. So we'll go ahead and start with the one that I want to talk about specifically. Is
the trade that didn't happen?
The trade that could have been. And
I mean the trade that basically was, except apparently people don't know how to use email.
Like, what, do they train football executives how to be football executives? Like, is there a course? I assume there isn't, but I assume there's some kind of basic understanding of how to do the job and the way the NFL wants to do it.
I think the answer to your question is no. Technically.
Well, yeah, as far as them being schooled on how, but part of your job as a football executive is to...
I want to see a bunch of executives sitting at tiny desks.
Right. Part of being an executive in the NFL is learning the rules and regulations of the NFL and what they expect you to do as far as the team's leadership is requiring and the NFL is requiring as a franchise. So for people that don't know, Cleveland was attempting to... and successfully came to terms with picking up A.J. McCarron, who is Cincinnati's backup quarterback, who's a solid guy. He did well last season when he had to fill in for Mr. Dalton. Kind of bummed it out in the playoffs, but, hey, he took him to the playoffs. Andy Dalton was out for a while.
But, hey, it's Cincinnati, and that's
just their thing. Andy Dalton can't even win a football game.
It's like, we're Cincinnati. We win 10 games. And then we make it to the first round of the playoffs, and then we lose.
Yep, that's just, so pretty much he was par for the course. He did exactly what everyone expected him to do, which was good.
Remember when Cincinnati was just, like, straight up bad all the time?
Oh,
now it's like, oh, they make it to the playoffs, they make it to the playoffs, they make it to the playoffs, and it's like, So the Bengals are like slightly less bad now, but still can't actually do anything.
Yeah,
So
those were the good old days back when it was Cleveland and Cincinnati like tussling down at the bottom of the AFC North.
oh, I remember those bum fights where you both end up at the end of the year with like 3 wins.
Hell yeah. And like it would have to be a tiebreaker to determine who got last in the AFC North. Yeah,
Yeah, it was like a strength of schedule thing, like
Yep.
which of you actually lost to better
Yep,
teams.
it was the good old days, man. Back when Cleveland wasn't just guaranteed to be shit.
All right, so talk about this thing that you hate.
Yep. Anyway, so Cleveland had come to terms with Cincinnati to trade for AJ McCarron. There's several things about this that frustrate me, so I'll finish the occurrence. In order to complete a trade in the NFL, not only do you have to agree between the franchises, you have to on trade deadline day, all the paperwork has to be submitted to the NFL by 4:00 p.m. Eastern Time. Now, this isn't it isn't like a huge ordeal. It's pretty much a slip of paper that states, hey, we're doing this, and the NFL goes, okay, cool, just so they know kind of thing. But if you don't do it before the trade deadline, you just can't. So what happened is Cincinnati sent in their paperwork around 3:55 p.m. Cleveland sent their paperwork in shortly after 4 o'clock. So the NFL told them, hey, you can't do that, so this trade never happened. Now, there's several things about this that irritate me. A, if you're a football executive and you understand that the trade deadline is October 31st at 4 p.m., there's no leeway. You get the paperwork to them by that. That is literally your job on trade deadline day, is to do these deals, make sure the paperwork's squared away, and do it. Evidently, according to some reports, some insiders, there was a bunch of celebration at the front office because they're like, fuck yeah, we landed A.J. McCarron. He's a solid quarterback. Give us some help in the quarterback room. And then they turned around and realized, holy shit, it's after 4 o'clock. We done fucked up.
It's like it's every sketch comedy bit ever where it's like, well, I mean, you sent it, right? No, I thought you sent it. No, you were supposed to send it.
Pretty much.
What do you mean we didn't send it?
Right. And so they appealed to the NFL. Of course, the NFL told them no. They sent an appeal and was just like, hey, can this still like happen? We weren't that late. It's like you arguing with your grade school teacher, about your homework. Be like, oh, can I turn it into you in fourth period? And then unbeknownst to your teacher, or probably your teacher definitely knows, but you're going to do the homework between class and then bring it back to them. The NFL wasn't buying it, so the Browns are pretty much stuck. So it shows so much incompetence with the front office of Cleveland, which had already been an issue over the past 2 seasons because Cleveland's doing their quote-unquote rebuild is doing this Moneyball thing. Dump the vets, get cheap young talent, acquire draft picks, all this fun stuff, and it's just not working.
So they Brownsed it.
This is beyond Brownsing it, dude. Like this is a level of I used to be able to be comfortable calling the Browns mediocre, but at least they did things right. This is just straight up pathetic, and that's all this is. This is Cleveland officially reaching the pinnacle of what I would consider completely worthless in the NFL. Like if somebody doesn't get fired this week, I'm going to be more pissed than I am right now. Like, somebody needs to get fired, and it better not be the fucking janitor. Like, I want, Sashi Brown's ass on the hot seat, There's been a rift between that front office and Hugh Jackson since the draft because they took the draft in a completely different direction when Hugh Jackson was under the assumption that he was going to get the players he wanted. There's so much control that's been taken away from Hugh Jackson when it comes to his input on what players to be picked up by that team. And even when the Browns have needed help, which this is not a recent phenomena. The Browns have needed help in very specific key positions for the past 8 weeks since the beginning of the season, minus the bye week. And we're waiting not only are we waiting to the trade deadline to make any moves on it, we can't even get that right. Like, when there's a hard limit, you have 8 weeks to dick around with trying to find the right trade, but when there's an actual hard deadline on it, you can't even do that right? Like, you drop the ball that fucking hard? No, somebody needs to get fucking fired. And if somebody doesn't get fired, then it's just going to further exemplify the incompetence of the front office staff and the fucking owner for not putting his fucking foot down. And a lot of problems are being blamed on Hugh and the coaching staff, but when there's such an obvious disconnect, and Hugh's having to work. I mean, let's face it. Hugh Jackson is having to work with a bunch of rookies and shitty fucking practice squad talent. And you're not going to win football games that way, but they wanted to they wanted to try to build up a strong foundation and then use cap space, more efficiently and all this dumb shit. And it's just not working. But the blame is obviously to be shifted to the front office, and this is proving the incompetence. This is it. Like, this is what happens when you have people that don't know how to operate a football team operating a fucking football team. You have an 0-8 team that can't make a trade deadline on, mind you, a trade that wasn't even a good trade in the first place. Jimmy Garoppolo just got traded to San Francisco for a second-round pick, and Jimmy Garoppolo has proven, granted in Belichick's scheme, but he has proven to be at least a solid quarterback up to this point.
For 6 quarters.
A.J. McCarron has played a good chunk of a season, but he has been said to have a lower ceiling, quote unquote, according to analysts. But we were going to give a second and third round pick for this man.
Okay, sorry. I want to keep going on this, but I just, to backtrack for a second, wanted to say that Hard Deadline was my G.I. Joe name, and that's all I needed to say. So go on.
So the trade itself wasn't even a good trade, in my opinion. If you wanted some kind of quote-unquote veteran leadership in that locker room, you shouldn't have cut all the veterans out of the locker room. But now we're trying to bring in a quarterback that hasn't seen a lot of play time.
It's a fair point.
Yeah, so we're having to bring a quarterback that hasn't seen a lot of first-string play time into a system that he may be familiar with because Hugh Jackson was his offensive coordinator at one point. That was literally the only positive I could see, is if we get A.J. McCarron, at least Hugh Jackson's coached the motherfucker before and he likes him. Hugh Jackson likes A.J. McCarron. But there was some solace in the fact that Hugh Jackson has coached A.J. McCarron before. And Hugh Jackson wanted him. Hugh Jackson was, from reports, quite upset when he found out the trade went through, or went under. Hugh Jackson was already upset when Garoppolo got traded to San Francisco. When we were trying to offer New England a first-round pick at the beginning of the season, dude, it got so bad that Hugh Jackson's fucking daughter took to Twitter and put the entire front office of Cleveland on blast.
Wow.
She pretty much said, somebody tweeted, so, hey, are the Browns pissed that Garoppolo got traded? And then some insider was like, yes. And then Hugh Jackson's daughter retweeted that and was like, well, it's hard to get players if you don't pick up the phones.
Boom.
And then the guy tweeted back, well, yeah, I'm right. And then she tweeted, I'm about to uncover all y'all's secrets. And it's just like, holy shit, Cleveland's front office is either about to get blasted or Hugh Jackson's daughter is about to get sent to Somalia.
Do you really think the Browns have that much cap space to spare?
to try to scrub somebody off the grid?
Yeah.
Actually, we do. So I was along for the ride for Moneyball last season. Dump veterans that haven't been very productive, acquire draft picks. Check. Rough it out this season and at least attempt to win some football games. Check. Try not to get anybody killed. Half check. Go into the 2017 draft and clean up. Check. Acquire those skill positions that we can utilize in the future that have a high ceiling and get them involved. Awesome. The part they forgot is use the remaining $20-something million cap space they had and get some fucking veterans back into those locker rooms to help these guys develop. We're relying on the coaching staff. There's like 3 veterans that I can name off the top of my head that have played in the NFL for longer than 3 or 4 years that play for the Cleveland Browns right now.
Y'all should have given us something for Marcel Darius.
I would have took it. Shit.
We probably could have gotten something better than a 6th rounder.
Probably. We got plenty to spare. The thing that frustrates me the most about it is you've been here, you've been riding this wave with me for the past 8 weeks. I've kept my mouth shut and I've tried to stay positive, but I've officially hit my breaking point. I was not nearly this upset with the Cleveland Browns last year when we were sitting 0-8 because
I don't know that I would say you tried to stay positive. You tried to be not negative.
I definitely tried to be not negative. But I was Cleveland was 0-8 last year and I could not remember being this upset, but I've officially jumped from that cliff.
Uh-oh.
To where unless something happens this week, some major overhaul of either the front office or we start going crazy in free agency to just see what's going on in there, or we start, something. If something doesn't happen this week, obviously trades are off the table. I'm going to hire a dude to stand out front of Berea with a sign that says "Fire Jimmy Haslam." He's the owner, but we'll find a way to fire him.
Okay, next week, Josh Gordon gets reinstated. It goes one of two ways. The Browns keep him. What's your reaction?
Great. We are not in a position to say no.
Okay. The Browns cut him.
See, that's a hard one. I could understand why they would feel inclined to do so. I don't think we're in a position to do it. They put with knowing Josh Gordon was in New York this week, they put him on the trade block before the trade deadline, and they shopped him around. Nobody wanted him. So why not?
Well, nobody wanted to trade for him.
Right, nobody wanted to trade for him. So why not just hang on to him? He's the best option we got, and that's saying something. I wholeheartedly believe that Josh Gordon is the best we got when it comes to putting some kind of actually skilled person in a skilled position. And now, we're not talking about seeing Josh Gordon on the field until December, but I think Cleveland would be dumb to not give it a shot. We haven't been paying him. He's been suspended without leave. Without pay. It's not like we've been giving him money, so we haven't lost anything on the guy. Every time he gets suspended, his contract gets suspended with it. So fuck it, why not? It's not going to offer. I don't see any downside besides we lose him again. Well, we've been without him for 2.5 years already. So what's the fucking harm?
Right.
So, if he fucks up again, he's never going to get reinstated. So he knows the line he's on right now, too. He's been reinstated in the NFL 3 fucking times. They're not going to do it again.
How many more weeks until he's out of the NFL permanently?
Well, I hope it's more than, 9.
First week of next year, Josh Gordon suspended.
Yeah, and oh boy, that'll be interesting. If we could just keep him for the rest of the season, just give me something to look forward to, that'd be great.
Okay.
But that'd be the other part of the news that I wanted to talk about is, although there's a lot of negative things going on in the House of Cleve right now, at least we can look forward to maybe getting Josh Gordon back by the first week of December. Because he is officially reinstated in the NFL and will be put on the commissioner's exclusivity list or some shit. I don't know.
Is that like the opposite of the honor roll?
I think it's the opposite of the honor roll. It's like, hey, if you fuck up, we're not only going to suspend you indefinitely, we're going to scoop your eyeball out or something. I don't know. It's
like the dean's shit list.
Yeah, pretty much. Goodell gonna have an eye on him.
All right, let's talk about the rest of the major trades from this week.
Sure.
I already brought him up, so let's talk about it. The Bills cut Marcel Darius, more or less. When you trade him to Jacksonville for a 6th round pick that's a conditional 5th based on performance, the Bills really do have a history of doing that with big, important players.
Yeah, and that's funny. Isn't Marcel Darius one of your more highly performing players? Or is he like a middle of the road kind of guy?
He is a perennial Pro Bowler when he wants to be.
So can a brother at least get a compensatory 4th out of the dude?
Yeah, right.
If we're gonna lowball, let's at least lowball realistically.
Yeah. Well, kind of like we'll talk about Ajayi in a little bit, but it sort of seems like both of those two share a similar fate of the coach is kind of wanting to use this move as a punishment move.
Yeah.
Though for Ajayi, it kind of didn't. We kind of don't think it went that way, but again, we'll talk about him in a couple minutes.
Sure.
We send Darius to Jacksonville. Jacksonville's got a pretty stout defense already, but the Bills also cut a ton of cap space, which is going to be important going further because Ndamukong Suh at one point set the record for the highest paid defensive lineman, and then Marcel Darius came right back around and beat that.
Sure.
So for at least a little bit, he was the highest paid D lineman in the league. Maybe defensive tackle. I don't know if it's the entire line or what, but
something like that.
So he was expensive. So we cut $8.5 million off of our cap this year and something similar next year. But then we cut 13 and 15 million the following years because he was just recently signed to a really big contract.
Yeah.
And he and Sean McDermott had basically been butting heads because McDermott's whole thing is, earn it if you want to be on the field, and a bunch of the team has really come together. And that's something I'll also talk about a little bit later when we actually talk about the Bills. It seemed like Darius was having disciplinary problems. It's not the first time this has been a problem. He's also been suspended at least once for substance abuse involving marijuana. He's had these sorts of issues in the past, and McDermott, I guess, is just totally putting his foot down and saying, nah, dude, like, Darius has been sat at the beginning of games recently. He hasn't been a starter. He's only been playing like half the downs of the game, and we've still been doing relatively well. Now, granted, we still also have Kyle Williams in the middle, and that helps a lot. So, it's not like we could suddenly pull 2 Pro Bowlers and be doing what we're doing, I don't think. It wasn't something... It was something that I could kind of see coming, and when I heard about it, I was like, oh. And then I was like, that makes sense. I'm not surprised by this.
Yeah.
I wish we had gotten more out of it, but I'm not shocked.
Yeah, that's one of those where it's really convenient that you can blame it on disciplinary issues, but also cutting, multiple millions of dollars off your cap.
It was another one of those Whaley year moves where we had just re-signed Marcel for a bunch. So
yeah, it's a good business decision as well as probably beneficial for him as a player to get out of that environment.
Right, because now, going into the other big Buffalo trade, we got Kelvin Benjamin.
Yeah, you did. And that freed up.
I hope that's good.
You should have seen how many Panthers fans were crying about losing him. So evidently they think highly of him.
Yeah, well, I mean, so Kelvin Benjamin comes out of that 2014 first-round wide receiver draft class that included Sammy Watkins, Odell Beckham Jr., Mike Evans.
Yeah, probably one of the more loaded wide receiver classes in a while.
Right. I think Eric Ebron was also part of that class. Also, he hasn't super produced since then, so he was kind of the one outlier.
Yeah, and it took Kelvin Benjamin a while to get into his stride, but he's been a reliable big man target for Carolina. I think that's going to be something that the Bills are going to be able to take advantage of, even if he's not. I mean, he's obviously going to walk right into the number 1 slot.
Yeah, I think so.
And that's something that they're going to be able to take advantage of pretty much immediately. Is big target in the red zone and somebody that can stretch the field with his side.
Yeah, I had an interesting comment said to me today at work, which was when I brought up the trade, one of my coworkers was like, Kelvin Benjamin, Sammy Watkins, it's basically the same thing. Like, they've both been hurt, and it's like, yeah, okay. Like, Kelvin Benjamin tore his ACL, and that's real bad, but we've seen players come back from it. Again, Adrian Peterson, a great example.
Yep.
And, a lot of times you don't really tear your ACL more than once.
Yeah.
For the most part, usually it happens. Or if it happens again, that's your career. But a lot of times we see these younger players these days tear it early, miss a season, and then come back and be pretty much fine.
Yeah, and that's the big difference between how the players are cared for nowadays versus how they were back in the day. I mean, an ACL injury used to be your career. That was it.
That was just it.
Yeah. But nowadays you can go to surgery, come back 100%. I mean, fuck. Adrian Peterson did it twice. I mean, we'll see how he's doing when Cardinals come back from bye. But he looked good when he was featured. He looked good, and that's just the difference of how players are taken care of. So I still think the Kelvin Benjamin thing was a smart move, especially with how you guys have been hurting with receivers.
Yeah, and getting back to the point was that Sammy Watkins also been injured, but he's had weird nagging things all over the place where it's like his feet or his ankles or something like that, and he's never been. I don't know that he's ever been 100% healthy. He broke his foot last year, and I think it was pretty much broken the entire season. I believe at one point Anthony Lynn, who's now the head coach for the Chargers, who was our offensive coordinator at the time, basically said. Sammy had off-season foot surgery, came back, played 2 weeks, got put on some form of IR. I think it might have just been straight up IR. And then when he came back off of it, Anthony Lynn made some comment to the effect of yeah, his foot's broken. And they're like, do you mean it's broken again or it's still hurting him or what? And he was like, or it never healed. And he was like, last I checked, his foot was still broken. And he used the word still. And it's like, okay, so Sammy Watkins' feet not so good.
Yeah, Sammy Watkins is obviously a madman.
But yes, getting back to your point, I think Kelvin Benjamin comes in. I think he's immediately the number one. I think Jordan Matthews shifts to number two, and I think Zay Jones gets to finally live in the slot where he belongs.
Right. Not in every snap receiver.
I think
big middle of the field target.
Yeah, I think we got our number one receiver who can play a lot of downs, who's not necessarily a burner still.
Sure.
But
yeah,
that dude,
he can go.
That dude apparently is a little overweight and has been having issues with that.
Mm-hmm.
But that guy's 6'5" and can still run a 4.62.
Yeah, and he bodies people, man. He is a physical receiver.
Find me a 6'5" defensive back.
Right. You know, and he will even the big defensive backs like Richard Sherman, you know, people like that are abnormally large for a defensive back.
Right, I think Sherman's 6'3".
Yeah,
still.
6'3", I think. And when you put like a 5'11" or 6 foot defensive back against 6'5" Kelvin Benjamin, and then you put a 50-50 ball up there, that's the thing that the Bills have really been missing. You know, you're always talking about Tyrod being able to pretty much teabag it in, you know, drop it in a bucket from 30, 40 yards out. But you were always talking about how the parameters pretty much needed to be established. You know, there had to be some kind of separation. There had to be a nice gap for him, a spot in the zone for him to throw it into. Now he can throw that nice lofting ball at single coverage. He could be tight single coverage. He could have got jammed at the line. But we're still talking about somebody at 6'5" that can body any defensive back in the league, and you've seen him do it. Now that doesn't make him, you know, the premier wide receiver. There are people in the league that play the position better, but he is leaps and bounds better than what the Bills have at their disposal right now.
Right. And yeah, the Tyrod went from having to drop it into a thimble to dropping it into, like, you know, a 55-gallon drum.
Right, exactly.
You know, Calvin Benjamin just has that kind of range, and Tyrod can kind of just leave it up there.
Yep.
And so long as he doesn't get, you know, tagged from both sides. Hell, even if he does get tagged from both sides as he's going up or coming down with it, that guy will probably still come down with a fair number of them.
Oh, absolutely. And it's not like they're only going to use him as a 50-50 ball target, you know.
Right. Also, think about our potential red zone threat between him, Andre Holmes, Charles Clay whenever he gets healthy, and like LaShawn or Nick O'Leary.
Absolutely.
we got a bunch of big guys. A lot of them have proven they've got hands. Andre Holmes is playing honestly slightly above my expectations at this point, and he's another 6'4", 6'5", you know, dude who can go up there and get it.
There's the worst thing to be combating in the red zone is a team that has a bunch of big physical guys that know how to get lost in the end zone. That's
right.
You know, it's
versus a mobile quarterback and a shifty running back. Like, good luck.
Right. You know, if you have
first off, I hope you guessed right. Second off, I hope you can do something about this.
Sure. So when you have a bunch of these physical guys that can have decent hands and can bring down some difficult balls. Now the guessing game between a running back and a scrambling quarterback now is a guessing game between those two options as well as the 3 red zone targets that they have in the end zone. It only takes one time for a big man to get open either in the corner or the back of the end zone because he gets lost in the coverage. It happens all the time. The linebackers play up for, you know, to anticipate the draw or something like that. And especially when they're running off the play action, you'll see, you know, big homie tight end literally standing in the back of the end zone waiting for the play action to be finished, and the linebackers don't even know what the fuck's going on because they're still looking down at the quarterback and the running back, and then they just fucking float it into the back of the end zone. You can't overshoot these guys. You know, it's not like you can shade extra coverage towards Kelvin Benjamin. It's not like you can commit to LaShawn McCoy. It's not like you can commit to spying on Tyrod. I think it's one of the best moves that the Bills have done in a while, as far as when I've been following.
It was alarming.
It was definitely alarming.
you were like, hey, so the Bills have a new wide receiver, and I was like, they what? Yeah. And I was thinking
that wasn't my verbiage or my phrasing. My phrasing was, hey, the Bills
have a wide
receiver now.
Yeah. So I was like, what second stringer did we get?
No,
like,
man.
Did we suddenly pick up like Mohamed Sanu or something? Like, which injured Giants wide receiver did we get?
Nope. Panthers number one
And
option.
and then it was like Kelvin Benjamin, and I'm like, you're what?
Yeah.
I think I sent you the word "what" about 12 times yesterday.
Yeah, pretty much. And the first time when I read it, I thought it was like y'all fucking with me, you know.
Yeah.
This
is a typo.
Yeah, as much as the Panthers are struggling with their offense right now, you're telling me they're gonna trade away one of their better receiver to that's not a thing that happened. But one thing it does show me is that the Bills they're going to take these last 8 games seriously. They're going to make a serious push for the playoffs and beyond.
It's very much what a lot of them were saying from the very beginning was, tank is not in our vocabulary. They've been building this kind of thing the whole time. Mm-hmm. And even when I was like, I don't know, you guys, since then they just keep proving that they can win games.
And they're winning them handily.
In certain cases, yeah, this week in particular.
Yeah, this week definitely in particular.
So we got a couple more trades to talk about before we move on to talking about actual games. Sure. Let's circle back around and talk about Jimmy Garoppolo getting sent to the 49ers and the fact that apparently some part of their coaching staff, I think it might have been their head coach, has already said that he may not play this year. And I think that's also weird.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Garoppolo is at least benched for a few weeks to learn the system. Now, to say he won't play for the whole year, I don't know about all that. Who else do the 49ers have at quarterback?
Not Brian Hoyer anymore.
They dropped Brian Hoyer, who's now back with the Pats, and the
fucking ring chaser.
Hey, he knows their system, man. That's all that is.
Uh-huh.
And then you have what's his dick? Fucking the guy we could never know. CJ Beathard. When we first saw his name, we were like, who? And I still say that
right.
because he sucks. But
because who?
Yeah, because who? Yeah, because they're going to put him back in after the way he's been playing. I think Garoppolo is going to sit for a few weeks to learn the system, and then Kyle Shanahan is going to throw him out there. Look, Kyle Shanahan is a great coach, and he has schemed wonderful offenses for football teams. Like, nobody expected the Falcons to be as good as they were last year. Look, Kyle Shanahan loses. They have a lot of the same leaves. They have a lot of the same talent. Now they're not as good, So it's definitely not. I just don't see it happening. Kyle Shanahan's gonna integrate him into that system, and he's gonna make the offense applicable for Garoppolo, and then we're gonna see. Yeah, but having Garoppolo sit for the rest of this season, I don't see it happening unless they're just gonna bite the bullet and say, fuck it, no, we're going to give you a solid 8 games to learn our system, and then we're going to draft some talent around you, and except for that number 2 pick, and then we'll go back at it hardcore next year.
I'm just sad that the Patriots are going to have a second-round draft pick before both of my second-round draft picks.
Yep, that's going to be a good old pick for them. And, well, that's one of the big things about – a lot of people are saying that the second pick – was an interesting value for a quarterback that a lot of people thought were worth a first-round pick before the beginning of the season. But a lot of people got to understand is, like, this is going to be an early pick. Like, we're talking about, like, 34, 35, So
at least.
Right. So this is going to be – there's still first-round talent on the table in the first few picks of the second round. So they're going to get a good player out of this pick. And so, if anything,
and they're the Patriots, so of course they're going to get a good player out of it.
Sure. And the biggest takeaway I have from this trade is it really shows that Bill Belichick and Tom Brady and the front office aren't really operating on the same page that much anymore. And the reason why I say that is because, at the beginning of the season they ditched Jacoby Brissett. Cool, no big deal.
Right.
Still had Jimmy G. Jimmy G's been a pretty important part of that offense, filling in for Tom Brady and being, to a lesser extent, a leadership role because he's been a mainstay in that team for a while. And then all of a sudden, Tom Brady starts coming out with this almost cultish fucking TB12 method shit. And he's like, nah, I'm going to play till I'm 60. But, so Belichick was positioning, the reason why they were posturing so hard at the beginning of the season is because when people were, hey, we'll give you a first-round pick for Garoppolo, and they're like, no, he's our quarterback of the future, And now Tom Brady's doing this thing where he projects himself to be playing for another 3 or 4 or 5 years, And they're just like, well, we need to get rid of Garoppolo now while he still has value.
Oh man, it's time. The planets have aligned. The Bills are going to win the AFC East.
Yeah.
If they win the next game, it'll be the first time they go 6-2 since they're Super Bowl teams. And then the Patriots, they don't have any quarterbacks. And then Tom Brady, the Madden curse will finally happen. And the Bills are going to win the AFC East.
The planets have aligned, and it's possible.
We have a wide receiver.
So you have a singular wide receiver, and you're currently tied for first in the AFC East. Anything is possible. It's a crazy year for football. Josh Gordon's back in the NFL. Wild things are happening.
We got a couple trades left to talk about. Let's talk about the maybe less impressive one because I just kind of want to get it out of the way.
Yeah.
The Seahawks acquire Dwayne Brown from the Texans. Apparently he's a pretty good lineman.
Yeah, he's the best lineman that they had, but one of the better linemen in the league. I think that was more of an injury and cap space issue.
Uh-huh.
And
that's what it seemed like.
Yeah, and he's injury prone. Seattle needs help at tackle. I think it kind of puts Deshaun Watson in a little shitty situation because that offensive line was already struggling at the beginning of the season. They kind of picked it up a little bit here, but fortunately for him, he does have legs and he does not extend the play. So I think it's going to be impactful, but not nearly a blockbuster or anything that's going to really break the role that Deshaun Watson's on right now.
Okay, just wanted to bring that up because apparently it was noteworthy enough to have headlines in a couple of places. So,
totally.
But the last one, another actual blockbuster because really, Kelvin Benjamin, Marcel Darius, the breakup between the Browns and the Bengals, not necessarily a blockbuster name. But, Jimmy Garoppolo and now A.J. Ajayi going from the Dolphins to the Eagles.
Like
for a fourth-round pick.
Talk about steal of the decade. Like, the front office of the Eagles should be convicted of a felony. That is larceny.
Yeah.
Now, let's be honest. It was the Dolphins'
NBA
fault,
would
though.
The NBA would look at that and go, no.
Yeah, you can't do that.
No, you may not.
Yeah, the Dolphins. I mean, it was the Dolphins' fault. Jay Ajayi was talking cash about the coaching staff and the front office, and to send a message.
Is that a term you millennials use these days?
What's that?
Talking cash.
Yeah, talking cash shit, boy.
Oh, okay.
You're a millennial too. Don't forget that.
Sure. You fucking youths. I don't know.
But the Dolphins' response in disciplinary action was to trade their best running back to the number one team currently in the NFL for a fourth-round pick.
Uh-huh.
And that number one team currently in the NFL already has a pretty solid backfield.
Uh-huh. LeGarrette Blount's pretty all right.
Way to hand them the NFC. That's what you just done did. You handed them the NFC for a fourth-round pick. I hope you're proud of yourself.
Like we were talking about earlier, it's like, okay, Ajayi was like fucking things up and talking shit about coaches and whatnot. But then as punishment, it's like, we're going to send you to the team that's probably to the championship game.
Yeah, let's send you to only the most consistently good team in the NFL currently. Like, that doesn't make any fucking sense. We're also going to severely weaken our own offense that is already struggling. When your coach is saying this is the worst offense ever in the NFL ever, and then you trade away literally one of your best players, if not your best player, as punishment. You know what's punishment for a football player? Sit them. Don't let them play.
Yeah, put them on the third string.
Yeah, put their asses on the practice squad. It worked for Pittsburgh. They benched the dude. He stopped talking shit. They're going to bring him back up. That's punishment.
And I don't know if it was like... Because I saw an interview with one of the guys who I guess was in the front office for the Eagles.
Yeah.
I wasn't paying that close of attention.
Sure.
But it said Eagles on the bottom third, and I was like, oh, okay. He basically was like, yeah, it was, it actually came together fairly quickly. And in retrospect, I'm thinking about that, and I was like, does this guy just have an incredible poker face, or has it not hit him yet? I mean, we've seen Ajayi in pads, like, wearing a different shade of green already. Like, does he not get it? Because in my mind, it's like, what was that phone call like? It's just the head coach from the Dolphins just being like, Ajayi! Take him, and the guy on the other end of the line's like a fourth rounder, and the head coach is like, yes,
fuck it, whatever.
And then he hangs up, and then like an angry all caps email shows up, and the Eagles guy just types in yes and sends it back and then forwards it to the NFL and is like, yep, that was easy.
Yeah, that was a trade. That was a thing. the Like, if you're gonna do that, at least get some fucking value. You know what I'm thinking?
Yo, he's on the second year of his rookie contract.
Right. Like, it's not even a financial burden to have that guy. Like, he's on the second year of his rookie contract. He's not worth squat as far as money goes, but he's one of the best running backs in the league.
The Eagles could legit, like, beat the brakes off of Ajayi for the next couple of years, use up all of his superpowers, and then just, like, nah, we don't want to sign him after this.
Yeah, fuck it. Like, it was a no-risk situation for them. It's like, yeah, we'll give up a fourth-round pick, whatever. It's probably going to end up being a practice squad player anyways. We'll give up your fourth-round. We'll give up our potential practice squad player for your definite Pro Bowler from last year.
Right, our basic fifth-rounder.
Right.
Because if you make it to that championship game, picking 31st in the fourth round, then you're not necessarily getting as much value most of the time.
Sure, yeah, you're digging at the bottom of the barrel. But J.J.
unless you're picking up Matt Milano, but we'll talk about him later.
Yeah, he was a Pro Bowler, dude. Like, he was potential, offensive rookie of the year last year.
Mm-hmm.
And fourth round, like, ugh,
So 200 yards rushing in 3 games. Granted, 2 of them were against Buffalo and a Rex Ryan defense. So
yeah. But he was consistently over 100 every other game.
Pretty much, yeah.
He had an unreal breakaway season last year. And you know what I think? I think that lineman coach that was snorting all that stuff was rubbing off on the rest of the coaching staff and front office, because now they must be doing drugs, because that's the only way I can figure out how this trade would make sense to anybody.
Yeah, unless Ajayi is actually some absolute poison pill, which it seems sort of impossible, because eventually you just get relegated to, again, like a third string or something, and people ignore you.
Yeah,
That and one of the first things that happened was Carson Wentz was like, yeah, well, if he's a problem, we've got plenty of leadership here.
Yeah.
And that's not going to be a problem for very long.
Sure. And in reality, the Eagles can pretty much spend the rest of the season not using them. They have plenty of running backs back there. So if it's one of those things where, hey, if he is an issue, you best be assured that they ain't gonna trade him away. They're gonna bench his ass.
Yeah.
And they're gonna just eat up that value, because it's fucking pennies to them, and then try to turn his attitude and then make him a productive member of the team, which is what the Dolphins should have been doing anyways.
Right. Well, it seems like the Dolphins are taking a real bad turn as far as their front office and kind of just everything goes. But those were kind of the major moves to happen at this trade deadline.
Yeah.
And now we've talked about that for 45 minutes, at least. So let's talk about some games.
Sure.
Let's talk about some games. You go first, and I totally understand if at this point in the season you're like, just listen to the other podcasts.
No, I actually have some good things to say about this one.
I had a couple good things.
At least for the first half of the game.
The Browns were negative 11 in turnover ratio going into the game.
Now they're negative 12.
And they're not negative 20 now, so that's a good thing.
Hell yeah. Yep. Deshaun Kaiser went an entire game without throwing an interception. Hooray. He also threw over 50%. Hooray. He also averaged more than 5 yards a throw. Hooray.
Woo. Did he actually throw over 50%?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he was 18 for 34.
Right, just barely.
Just barely. Isaiah Crowell looked wonderful for the first half, and then they stopped using him in the second half when we got far behind, because Cleveland doesn't know how to play 2 halves of football.
Boo.
Yeah, I guess a hooray wouldn't have been appropriate. I kind of went positive and negative on that one. Anyways, Cleveland was leading at the half.
Yes, that's in my notes.
Yep.
Cleveland led by an entire point.
Which is an entire point more than any other game in the entire season, because that was the only halftime lead we've ever had. The negative side of that is we were only able to score once in the second half and didn't find the end zone for that single score. So that was fun.
You guys got on the board first.
Did get on the board first. I got on the board first after a pretty nasty interception. That was nice. If there's one thing I like about Carl Nassib, he's not the world's greatest pass rusher. He's a solid pass rusher. He's currently he filled in for Myles Garrett, who was out on concussion again. He has great awareness of when the quarterback is going to make an attempt to throw the ball. Like, he had fucking 5 deflections last season. Like, the dude is crazy with the ninja deflections off the line. So he tips one up, and then our linebacker comes down with it and puts it in scoring distance. On the next play, Isaiah Crowell runs it in for a touchdown. And that was probably the most excited and I've been about Cleveland football in a while.
And then they missed the extra point.
Because Zane Gonzalez is fucking trash. This is why you don't waste draft picks on kickers.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he was 50% for field goals and 50% for extra points. Like, get out of my face with that shit. Those are bad.
Yeah, those aren't money making numbers.
Right. Saw some good things out of the defense in the first half. Everything kind of fell apart in the second half. Typical Cleveland stuff. Pretty much from halftime on, it would be one of those things where please refer to the last 7 podcasts.
The thing that I will say is I feel like a lot of times when we talk about our games, we neglect to talk about the other side, which has been bad. But anyways, this Adam Thielen kid is pretty good, apparently.
Yeah, dude, he had a good game. The Browns.
He's number 2 in the NFL in receiving yards so far.
Yep.
Only behind Antonio Brown, who has a stupid amount more yards than the next person.
Yeah, a stupid amount more yards and receptions. It's literally the only person Ben Roethlisberger's throwing to.
It's 5 through 2 on the list are high 500s, low 600s, and then Antonio Brown's 825 or something like that, and it's what? Dude, what?
Yeah, he's on pace for a 1,700 yard season.
Yeah, that's dumb.
The last person to do that was Megatron and Josh Gordon, who led the league in receiving yards with 1,643 in 2013.
All right, so we'll jump into Buffalo versus Oakland.
Sure.
Marshawn Lynch suspended for the game.
Yep.
Beast Mode does not get his Buffalo homecoming this year.
Nope.
So he did not play.
That's sad.
Buffalo won this game 34-14. Surprised me. I thought we had a shot. Relatively early in the season when Oakland was not necessarily showing up to games.
Well, I mean, let's be honest. Since Derek Carr's gotten back, they've only really shown up to one game, and that was when they beat Kansas.
Yeah, Buffalo wins that game.
Talk about leaning on your ground game.
Tyrod wins on 20 for 27 passing for 165 yards. Mm-hmm. So good percentage, not a lot of yards, got a touchdown out of it. LaShawn McCoy, though, finally really busted out. 151 on 27 carries, and he had that one at the end that was basically in garbage time, but if you're a fantasy owner, you don't really care.
Nope.
The other thing that I will say is that Zay Jones got 50% of his catches on the year this game.
Yep.
He went 3 for 5 for 32 yards. Not a lot of yards, not a huge number of catches, but holy crap, he caught more than 2 and above 50%. So
hooray! We're turning some corners.
I'll take the baby steps before we put him into the slot for the rest of the season. Please put him in the slot. So anyways, other highlights from the game. Oakland got held to 54 yards rushing. That's not a lot.
Nope.
Not that they've been putting up huge numbers this year. I don't know that the number of times they've broken even 100 yards is more than 3.
It's definitely a low number. And that 50 yards was not only was the entire team shut down in rushing, that 50 yards was by committee. They're individual rushers. There was no dramatic difference in production between the two backs that they were featuring.
Yeah, no. 26 yards, 21 yards, and then a couple of what looked like end arounds, basically.
Yeah.
Buffalo got 2 picks on Derek Carr, so that's pretty good. Micah Hyde got his 5th of the season, which either now has him back to leading the NFL or tied for the lead.
Right.
Oakland had 4 turnovers to the Bills 0, so the Bills came into that game plus 9 or 10, so they left plus 13 or 14 for the season, which I think has them still in. I think we're first in differential, but second in total turnovers forced.
Right.
But, considering we've only got 3 turnovers on the season, that's pretty good.
No, absolutely.
One of the big parts of the game is I feel like we're starting to see, or I'm starting to see, I don't know who the hell watches these games.
Me.
I'm starting to see a lot more of players just absolutely giving every effort on every single play, even if the last one didn't necessarily go their way.
Sure.
Play in, play out, they give this extra effort. So Preston Brown ends up like getting his hand up on a ball, tipping it, and one of the passes goes for an interception. Following play, does the same thing, gets his hand on a ball in the passing lane, and tips it just enough for Matt Milano to get his hands on it for an interception. Mm-hmm. So you're seeing some of these guys step up. And Matt Milano's an exceptional case because he's playing for Ramon Humber, who's still been injured with his thumb, who, again, when he got injured, was the Bills' leading tackler.
Right.
So Matt Milano's come in and been insane. He got an interception last game. He got an interception this game. He forced a fumble and got a different fumble that he ran back for a touchdown. Mm-hmm. The Bills are making things happen with the pieces that they have. And I heard one commentator on some sports program, I can't speak to if it was NFL Network or ESPN or whatever, but it was like, yeah, the Bills are winning with this group of, like, who are these guys? And it's not entirely like, who are these guys? Like, we have LaShawn McCoy, we have Tyrod Taylor, who at this point, year after year, people are like, yeah, he's underrated. Like, nobody gives him enough credit. And now we're, like, finally maybe turning that corner, possibly.
Right.
But, you know, we've got LaShawn, we've got Tyrod, we've got Jordan Matthews, like, we had Marcel Darius, we have Kyle Williams. Like, the whole team isn't necessarily nobodies, but I would more easily compare us to, like, the Celtics of the last couple of years, where it's like a lot of role players or people that you wouldn't necessarily think of as starters on other team, but everybody's kind of come together to make this thing work. The other thing that's interesting to see is there was one play in the third quarter where Brandon Tate picked up a first down on a 2nd and 20, and basically the entire bench got up and, like, celebrated with him. And it's like, it's early in the third quarter, and that was like a 2nd and 20. That wasn't a touchdown. That was just a first down on a long thing. And it's funny because a lot of people on the team have talked about it, and even McDermott was like, yeah, I had never seen an entire team, like, get up and celebrate that organically. Like, special teams, defense, offensive players, like, people in ponchos who were wearing street clothes, like, everybody got up and was like, yes, you did it. This is happening. Yeah. We are making this thing. And it's cool because the other thing that, like, reporters and stuff are talking about now is, like, one, the protect our dirt thing, which is basically the protect our home turf. Yeah. But apparently Sean McDermott went out and collected dirt from the field and put it in every one of the players' lockers. Jesus. And is like, this is what you're here for. Like, it's the most Under Armour commercial shit I've ever heard in my entire life. But the Bills are 4-0 at home, so it's working, I guess. The other thing that's interesting is apparently a lot of the, like, conversations and stuff is not like, okay, you're the first string wide receiver, you're the second string wide receiver, you're yada yada, whatever. It's, if you're on the team, you're a defensive back or a wide receiver or a running back.
Right.
There's none of this, like, hierarchy of, well, you're before him, who's before him, right, or any of that kind of stuff. Well, they try and make it a very equal playing field.
Yeah, and that's important for you to maintain a next man up mentality. You know, it's not that you are second string. It's just you are afforded playing time. You know.
Sure. I mean,
everyone plays a role.
We were still winning games with Jordan Matthews hurt and LaShawn McCoy not getting any rushing yards.
Yep.
So
next man up.
The other thing is that they talk about how it's not basically three teams. It's one team, and they play different parts of the game. Whereas I think it was Jordan Matthews specifically, was like, yeah, you know, with some situations, it's like, okay, there's the offensive team, and then the defensive team, and then the special teams team, and it's like three teams coming together to try and win one game. Whereas the community in the locker room at this point is like, no, we're all doing this together.
Yeah, it's defense, offense, and the weird guys.
Yeah, right. Those guys with the one fat leg.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of, every team where they're really serious about a serious push, or like if they're one of those cusp teams like the Bills have been for so long, sometimes a culture change is really all you need. Because like you said, yeah, there are excellent, talented players on the Bills, but the team as a whole is not an exceptionally talented team. But they have grit, and there's a culture. There's a winning culture in Buffalo right now. And sometimes that's all it takes.
the Bills could use a little help, but I think they might make it.
Oh, sure. Well, that's why I said they're not the most talented team on the planet.
I will say something at this point that I don't think I've ever said in conversation as a Bills fan, and I don't mean on this show.
Just in general?
Just in general, with actual seriousness. I think the Bills might make the playoffs this year.
You think?
I'm
right there with you. Hey, remember the first episode of this podcast when I said the Bills could very potentially make the playoffs this year?
Yeah, remember the very first episode of this podcast where I said the Bills are going 4-12?
Yep, you're already wrong, and I am much more right than you once again.
Yeah, well, we'll see how this finishes out. We still have every possibility to lose everything from here on out, but I'm still hoping that the Madden curse strikes and, New England is totally out of quarterbacks.
I was going to say, if New England loses out and then, Tom Brady, breaks a hip because he's old.
I'm just saying, we got a couple games for Tom Brady to get hurt and Brian Hoyer to be the starter before the Bills have to play him.
Yeah. Hey, Brian Hoyer's not terrible.
I got until December still. I got time to wait. Anyways, let's talk about some more games. Maybe we'll fire through these a little quick. Maybe we won't.
Sure.
We'll see how this goes.
Depends on how interested I am.
Yeah, I mean, some of these games were legitimately interesting. A couple of them, either came right down to the wire or came to, a field goal or less. So
sure,
those are always good to check out. One that definitely didn't come down to a field goal or less involves one of our trading partners from earlier, the Ravens and the Dolphins.
Yeah.
Baltimore. I think let's see if I can find it. I think the technical term for this is a shit kicking.
Yeah, no, Miami totally got the shit kicked out of them.
And
Baltimore's offense didn't have to do a fucking thing.
They sure as hell didn't.
They did do things, but it wasn't a lot of things. God, dude, that was pretty much Baltimore cementing themselves as we have a premier defense in the AFC. And just because we've lost a few games doesn't mean shit. That's the offense's fault.
What is up with the Ravens this year where it's every week it's oh, they're awesome. Oh, look, they're terrible. Oh, they're great again. Oh, well, they can't do it. They're the least consistent team, I think, so far this season.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with you there. I would say between them and Jacksonville.
Yeah, but at least Jacksonville can be blaming shit on injuries and not just weird flukes where you lose to Jacksonville 44-7.
Right. There's some good things going on in this game. Baltimore.
How many defensive touchdowns did Baltimore score? Was it
4? I think it was 4.
Because I scroll down and this Disney-owned website wants to tell me 5, but I only count 2. But it definitely, watching the highlights, looked like more than 2.
Yeah, I think.
But I kind of also lost track after a certain point.
Well, we can do some basic math to determine it. They only scored 2 offensive touchdowns, so
I do a bunch of counting at work. I don't want to do this.
I got you, bro.
I'm out.
It
looks like it was.
It was at least
it was
3.
Probably 4.
It was at least 3. Yeah, that was a ridiculous defensive showing by the Ravens. Nobody on Miami's side. It was one of those things where everything for Baltimore was ticking on defense. Offense, not so much. Not a lot of that was completely Baltimore's fault, considering Joe Flacco was taken out of the game because Kiko Alonso obviously doesn't understand how to hit a quarterback. So
yeah, I don't know what's up with that. We were talking about it the day after it happened, because I think you messaged me right when it was happening, and I was like, I'm tired. It's Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
I have to work tomorrow still.
Yeah.
So you sent me a message, and I saw it at the time, and I was like, that's bad. Mm-hmm. And then I fully explained it to you. I was like, okay, so here's the problem that I have with this: is one, Kiko should have done something to at least try to pull off. He obviously didn't do that. He nailed Flacco. Flacco was in the motion of sliding and, therefore is giving himself up. The problems that I have are mainly, basically you pointed out, Flacco is the worst slider in the league.
Pretty much.
According to you. And I think it was like a 3rd and 8 play, and I think it's bullshit when quarterbacks go out and are like, I'm going to run, I'm going to go for the first down. And then it's like, oh, sliding is going to be the thing that protects them. But they're not sliding like they normally would, where it's like, oh, I got out and it was a 3rd and 1. So I ran 4 yards and then slid another 3 because I just gave myself up immediately. It's like, no, this dude's going for the first down, and then on top of that, using this as a defensive mechanism
Sure.
to protect himself. And again, I'm not saying using it as a method to protect himself is bad, but when you start your slide and your head is still at like waist level or higher, and the defender takes one step, granted, again, Kiko was still aiming low,
Yeah.
but his job is to also stop Joe Flacco from making it across that line. And until basically until slightly before that moment happens, he's got no way of knowing if Joe's suddenly going to stick his head out, which would also be stupid.
Yeah.
But not unheard of by quarterbacks. Again, at that point, you're established as a runner. You just have at this point, all running backs should just start sliding.
Yeah, like fuck fighting for yardage, because you're going to slide and then you're going to get hit and then you're going to get an unnecessary roughness penalty and you're going to get 15 extra yards anyways. So you don't even need power backs. You just need shifty guys that are tiny that can slide under defenders.
Anytime you bounce it to the outside, just, take your couple of steps, and instead of, stepping out of bounds or whatever, just, act like you're going to keep going and then start sliding. And then, even if you get it a third or a quarter of the time, you're talking about, averaging an extra 4 yards. So,
yep. And that's if you don't get the penalty.
Yeah, and an automatic first down.
Yep.
So,
and and I see all that, and I do, and I'm trust me, I'm not trying to take all the blame off of Joe Flacco because he is a terrible slider.
And it's a bad hit. It's a real bad hit.
Yeah.
Kiko shouldn't have done that. He should have known something better, or tried to at least, aim higher, but it seemed like as soon as Flacco was going down, he was just going to aim for that one spot anyways.
Yeah, and just say fuck it.
Yeah, and just say fuck it. So he didn't do anything to try and pull off of it. So
right.
I'm not trying to say that, it was cool.
Sure, yeah, and I get that. And like I said, I'm not trying to take all the blame off of Flacco, because when Flacco slides, he has a tendency to keep his upper body relatively high. And Flacco doesn't know how to slide, man. Like last year there was an entire Come On Man reel from Randy Moss of just Flacco sliding last season. Defensive players are trained when hitting a quarterback that has established themselves as a runner that isn't traditionally like a rushing quarterback. They're trained to aim high, so if they dip down in the slide at the last minute, your trajectory carries you over the player. Kiko aimed low, and that was obviously where he was going to aim regardless of whether or not Flacco slid or not, and he cracked him hard as fuck. Knocked him damn near unconscious, if not unconscious. I mean, I think he was unconscious because his arms were stuck in that I just got knocked the fucked out position. And
the classic one the universal sign for, oh shit.
Right, and when they took his helmet off, it looked like he got hit by a fucking freight train. What kills me about that hit...
He looked like Krispy Kreme with a hot light on.
Yeah, pretty much.
Them eyes was glazed.
What kills me is Kiko's not going to see any repercussion from this.
He might get a fine.
He's probably going to get a fine. He's not going to get suspended. And it's so unlike Kiko, and that's part of the issue I had with it. Is he's a heads up fucking defensive player. He's a smart defensive player.
He's smart. He gets a bunch of tackles.
Yep.
Like, that's kind of what he does.
Right.
He doesn't do this dumb shit.
Right. He knows better, And I was more upset with the fact that it was Kiko. If it was somebody like Vontez, I would expect it. Like, the motherfucker only knows how to hit people, and that's hard and mean,
Right. And that's exactly what I said to you. I was like, wow, that Kiko did that, huh? That seems wildly out of character.
Yeah, and that when I saw the hit, it was I had to double take because A, Kiko cut his hair. And
right,
but B, that's not something I expect to see from Kiko Alonso. So when I turn back and I see he has his helmet off and he's yelling at one of the Ravens players that came and bum rushed him, and it says Alonso on the back of his jersey, I was like, "What, Kiko? What have you done?" And then he starts getting in Harbaugh's face while Harbaugh's fucking shouting at him, and I was like, "Oh Lord, somebody gonna die."
Yeah, that was all bad.
But some other takeaways of the game is, the Miami Dolphins are pretty much lost without Tannehill or Cutler.
Apparently, the takeaway from the Miami Dolphins is AJ Ajayi is shit. 13 carries for 23 yards. Like, who would trade for him?
Yeah, like, and you wouldn't get any value for that guy whatsoever.
No, I'm thinking like maybe a fifth rounder.
Yeah, maybe fifth compensatory, sixth at the most.
Yeah, like a Darius trade.
Right.
A couple more things. I mean, Joe Flacco still went 10 for 15 for 101. Ryan Mallett went 3 for 7 for 20. Both of them got a touchdown. Collins for Baltimore, their running back, had 113 yards on 18 carries. Baltimore ran for a combined 174. So, yeah, it was mostly just a game where Baltimore kicked the ever-loving shit out of Miami, and that was kind of how that went. And then the Dolphins coach got angry, and now Jay Ajayi is no longer a Dolphin.
On his way to an NFC championship.
Yeah, very likely.
Yep. At least make it to the game.
Yeah. Okay, next up.
Got Colts and the Bengals. So Jacoby Brissett, he didn't look terrible.
No, I mean Jacoby Brissett again was able to produce. He just had bad plays at bad times. The Colts were still totally in this game.
Oh, totally.
Like from what I was watching, it looked like they had 2 possessions in the last 2 minutes.
Mm-hmm. No, they could have easily come back and win that game.
Weird stats from this game. Jack Doyle, who's apparently a tight end for Indianapolis, who's not a guy I had ever heard of before.
Yeah.
12 for 14 for 121 yards and a touchdown.
Yep.
If you secretly had him on your fantasy team somewhere, then that paid off for you.
Yeah. Unless he was like your bye week tight end and you had him benched. I'm pretty sure he made a pretty impressive sideline catch too. It was thrown relatively tight to the sideline and he was covered pretty tightly, and he reaches out the downfield arm and tips the pass towards him, and then has to tip it again, and then grabs it and tiptoes into the sideline. So it's like, when did he train in with the receivers?
I'm going to say that considering he has 12 receptions and there were 25 total completions, it was probably him.
Yeah, he was definitely the go-to. And his targets, the receptions looked good. His hands were sticky that day.
Yeah, 12 for 14 targets is real good. Mm-hmm. But less good are the weird ones of like AJ Green, who went 3 for 8 for 27 yards and a touchdown, and T.Y. Hilton, who went 2 for 7 for 15 yards and no touchdowns.
Yeah, weird games weird stat lines for the receiver core on either side. Joe Mixon being the most productive receiver. Once again, why are running backs being the receivers for these teams? But I guess it happens.
I mean, Carolina's number 1 receiver is their running back, so.
Yeah. But that was pretty much the exact opposite of the game, Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon still managing to almost get 100 yards from scrimmage, but literally almost none of them from the running game.
91 receiving and 18 rushing does not a great running game make.
Nope. Averaging 1.6 yards a carry.
That's bad.
Yeah, that's real bad. Like, what?
That's just bad.
Yeah. I wonder when Cincinnati is going to ditch. Well, I guess they can't now. Trade deadline's over, but getting rid of Jeremy Hill and either Jeremy Hill or Gio Bernard to clear up some cap space, because they're obviously trying to feature Joe Mixon. But
yeah, I mean, they could still cut him, but again, you're going to take some dead money hits at that point.
Yeah, you're going to at least eat their cap for the day or for the year. Yeah, but besides those statistical anomalies, this game was pretty much a standard outing.
The Bengals ended up losing a punt late in the game that gave Indianapolis great field position. This was still in the 4th. The Colts could have come away with a touchdown because I think it was like just outside of their red zone to start off with. They ended up only coming away with a field goal.
Yeah.
And also in that quarter, a pick six is what actually put Cincinnati back in the lead. Some defensive plays stopped Brissett late, but that interception actually came earlier than that to put Cincinnati ahead.
Yeah.
Which is, that's a real ass buster to turn around, throw a pick six, give up the lead, and then just get stymied.
Yeah, that was. I mean, Indianapolis were in the game until the end, and they had every opportunity to win it. So you can't say much about that pick. Obviously, that pick was brutal as far as the outcome of the game. That's one of the few times where you can actually say that a turnover pretty much decided the football game, but it wasn't. It didn't seal their fate. They had opportunity to climb back in it, but
Right. Just couldn't quite make it out of that hole.
couldn't quite make it out of the hole. They need to buy a bigger ladder.
Okay, so coming up next, the Chargers versus the Patriots.
Yeah, a relatively mediocre win from the Patriots.
Yeah, 21-13, not exactly the blowouts or shootouts or anything that we've seen from the Patriots, who have seemingly carried themselves on nothing but their offense so far this year.
Yep. But when you're playing a team as stagnant on offense as the Chargers, you can kind of pump the brakes a little bit on the offense. Although I don't feel like that was their intention, but that's obviously what happened.
I thought you couldn't say nothing bad about Phillip Rivers.
No.
I thought that was the rule.
No, I can't say anything bad about Phillip Rivers. This wasn't Phillip Rivers' fault.
Okay, I can say something bad about Phillip Rivers. Watch this. You want to see it?
Yeah, go for it.
How do you lose 20 yards on one sack?
Look, man, sometimes you just got to scrambles.
There's a difference between your line missing a block and, oops, he got sacked, and running backwards like an extra 15 yards.
He was trying to escape the pressure.
Yeah, it didn't work. He should try less next time.
Or try better.
Yeah, like either try less or do better. Yeah, it was kind of just another example of, the better team beating the worst team. In this situation, the Chargers just haven't been able to get their shit together, really. Phillip Rivers was middling at best at quarterback, and Tom Brady was still, very productive. A single touchdown pass is not very productive, but 32 on 44 for 333 passing, not bad. The one true stud stat, I think, out of here, it comes from Melvin Gordon, who had 14 carries for 132 yards and a touchdown for the Chargers.
Yeah, one of those. Once again, going back to our.
Take this one thing
yeah,
away.
What seems to be our pastime at this point. If you take away that 87-yard scamper, his stats are substantially less impressive. But
yeah, because it was like the first 6 or 10 minutes of the game.
Yeah.
But it was like the Rams' first actual possession,
right.
And he just broke outside and was gone.
Yep, but he pretty much did squat after that. But you can't take away can't take away somebody's ability to outrun an entire defense for 80 plus yards. That sounds hard.
LaShawn McCoy got a garbage time touchdown. They still didn't stop him.
Nope.
A couple other interesting things. Brady proving that he's a good quarterback, which I have to roll my eyes and keep them from falling down the back of my throat every time I have to say that.
Yeah, does he have to prove it at this point?
Yeah, 4 receivers in the game with 50 or more receiving yards. That's pretty incredible.
Yeah.
In my opinion, that's definitely proving that you can still get the ball to multiple people, especially when neither of those people are like Danny Amendola or
Brandon Cooks.
But, Gronkowski on the list, Hogan on the list, James White on the list, Rex Burkhead on the list. Just a couple more notes on the Chargers versus the Pats. New England only put up 6 points in the second half, which is seemingly a pretty low number for them. A couple field goals, not really a lot to write home about, but the game also contained one of the dumber punt returns I've ever seen, and definitely the dumbest kick return I think I've seen this season, where Travis Benjamin caught a punt and then ran backwards and then got stuck in his end zone, and I believe it was called a safety.
Yeah, that's not a good look.
That's pretty bad.
Yeah, just a wee bit.
So you shouldn't do that.
Definitely
Eventually just slide, and hopefully they'll hit you in the head. Coming up next is the Bears versus the Saints, and you knew Mitch Trubisky couldn't keep it up that long.
Well, he was barely keeping it up to begin with. This is the first game since he's been a starter where he's thrown the ball more than 10 times. Come to find out, when you don't have any receivers, it doesn't matter who's playing quarterback. Hooray!
We got the Bears versus the Saints, and they let Mitch, throw more passes than he has fingers on his hands.
Right.
And I'm not sure if that worked out for him.
No, definitely not. I mean, his numbers are his numbers are bad. Now, a lot of that can be attested to. There were a lot of drops.
Uh-huh.
I mean, Kendall Wright was 2 for 8.
Yeah, that's...
I guarantee you, not all of those were just bad throws. Mitch Trubisky is one of the more accurate passers in the league. As far as he was one of the more accurate passers coming out of this draft class would be a more accurate statement.
Sure.
But so I find it very hard to believe that all of those missed targets were just bad balls. Trey McBride had a consistent game stretching the field for him, which is something they need. He has 3 receptions for 90-something yards, 92 yards, and none of those were on like huge chunk plays. Like the longest reception he had was 45 yards, which is a big play, but it wasn't like he got 70 of those 90 yards on like a crazy long touchdown.
Right, even at that point you're getting 45, 44 and 2.
Yeah.
So
consistent target stretch in the field. I'm still under the school of thought, and maybe it's just I'm a little jaded because I like Mitch Trubisky. He used to play for UNC, but it's hard. It's especially hard as a rookie to perform at a level expected at the pro level when you just don't have any help around you. Yeah, Drew Brees still great. No touchdowns, but with numbers like 23 for 28 and 299 passing yards, and similar situation with the Patriots game where he had 4 receivers that were 40-plus yards receiving. Spread the ball around. Running game took care of their business. Mark Ingram still a very consistent person in the backfield for them. It was just a good, consistent showing from the Saints where the Bears just couldn't get anything going.
I guess the one thing that was like noteworthy in the game itself, other than just analyzing it over the top, is there was a very questionable touchdown pass called back for the Bears that I think would have at least made the game close at the time, and I think it was in like the third quarter.
Sure.
And it was one of those like, I don't see how that's not a completed pass. That's just for any Bears fans that happen to actually be listening to this. Is I saw it.
Yeah, we got your back,
I didn't like the call either. I think it was a bad one. Let's move on to the Falcons versus the Jets.
Holy shit, the Falcons beat somebody in the AFC East.
I was going to say, the Falcons, they don't get swept by the AFC East, and yet the only team that they managed to beat is
the worst team that was AFC.
Yeah, the team that we started off saying this season is the worst team in the league.
Yep.
So
in very unconvincing fashion, too.
Yeah, like the Jets still had a chance to win that.
Yep, and Josh McCown was dotting up that defense.
So yeah, I mean, I don't have a huge amount to say about this. The Falcons are finally pulling out of their nosedive, and the Jets are starting theirs. I don't know. They're both things that fly, so.
I mean, the Jets, I wouldn't say the Jets weren't in a nosedive to begin with. They were already losing out on the season so far. But the Jets have definitely proved that they are not nearly as bad as everyone thought they would be.
No, I mean, they're, I would say the Jets at this point are falling into the category of the trap team.
Yep.
Where
you'll lose to them if you get too comfortable.
Yeah, if you show up, don't plan against them. I mean, it could very well happen to the Bills because they play this Thursday, which is totally 2 days from now and not tomorrow.
Because it's Tuesday.
Because it's Tuesday, November the 1st. So, for all I know, the Bills turn around and end up 5-3, and the Jets are suddenly, 4-5, and then, we suck again. And the Bills start their slow but, very well paced at this point decline back below 500.
Yeah, and then you won't be completely wrong.
Yeah, but again, I think the Bills probably make the playoffs. I think the Bills probably win this game, but we'll see because it's in New Jersey. So
as far as this game goes, it was your pretty standard affair. Both teams were passing the ball relatively well. Matt Ryan was getting more chunk yards out of his receptions.
The Falcons did have a late punt that got muffed by the Jets.
Yeah.
Which set them up in range. Like, A, flipped possession back so the Falcons were able to burn more time off the clock, but then B, also put them basically immediately in field goal range, which then forced the Jets to, which would have forced the Jets to score a touchdown had they been able to.
Right.
So that's a really big deal. when it goes from, okay, we're going to get the ball back and drive, and all we need is a field goal to win, not even tie,
Sure.
to now we need a touchdown and there's less time.
Absolutely.
On top of that, it's another game that ended with a 10-second runoff. Last time we saw this was against Detroit, and I think week 2, week 3?
It was relatively early, where it was a good call.
Right, it was the correct call. But this one was an offensive penalty that also incurred a 10-second runoff, which ended the game, which is like arguably an even less savory way to end it. It's not even like you were out of timeouts and you just didn't time it right. It was like, oh, well, we had 8 seconds on the clock and it was stopped, but this guy flinched, so yeah, other than that, seems like another game where the team that was supposed to win actually did for once, which transitions us nicely into the easiest game to call for the entire season, San Francisco versus Philadelphia. Philadelphia wins.
Big fucking shock.
Brian Hoyer's not even on this team yet. Jimmy Garoppolo's not on it yet. Carson Wentz is the new Tom Brady.
I don't buy that.
If you think 112 rushing yards is good now, wait until Ajayi gets there when they put up 4,800 in a single game. They're going to have to build an extra stadium next to the stadium so that Ajayi can run, plays while he's not running plays. I don't know, man. The Eagles are good, but it's the third team that they've beaten at this point that hasn't had any wins when they played. So I'm still of two minds.
Not only that, but this game was substantially. This game kind of harkened back to the original thought processes we had with the Eagles. Is that, man, their defense does so much for that fucking team. Mm-hmm. And which is not necessarily a bad thing, but people are talking up Carson Wentz. People are talking up Carson Wentz like MVP candidate. And he's had a game where he's really showed me something. But most games, he just has to exist and not turn the ball over, make some decent plays downfield, and then the defense will take care of the rest. That's why I was so happy about last week. This week kind of falls back into that category. Okay, but were you playing an actual football team, and do you have to really do much when your defense gets, 3-4 turnovers and scores off of 2 of them?
Right.
You get one defensive touchdown, and then you get all these short field turnovers, and we're pretty much back to square one, where it's just like, all right, but I really need the Eagles to play somebody.
I bet if you ask Carson Wentz at this point if he was an MVP candidate, he might look at you and just be like, bitch, I might be. You like that? I don't know.
Do you like that? No.
I just, I don't know. I don't have much to say about this.
Dude, the team that was going to win won.
The new San Francisco quarterback didn't really do shit. Their rushing game didn't really do shit. Their quarterback was their leading rusher.
Right.
Their number one running back got 25 yards.
Sure.
Their receiving was abysmal, let's say.
Yeah.
And Carson Wentz did enough.
It's the 49ers. There's not much to say about it.
Nick Foles had 2 carries for -2 yards. Yeah. I don't know what Nick Foles is even doing on the field right now. I had to click on his name just to make sure there wasn't just some kicker or some punter whose name was also Nick Foles that now played for the Eagles, who thought it'd be cute to run a punt a couple of times.
Right.
But nope, still that same guy. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if he's still getting paid a bunch of money right now, isn't he?
Who, Nick Foles?
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much.
So, what's he care?
Yeah, fuck it.
I'll be on a 7-1 team as a quarterback and get paid more than this rookie that's actually doing everything.
If we think about it that way, Jimmy Garoppolo is a 2-time Super Bowl champion.
He is, technically.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Of course they're going to be perfectly fine sitting back and going, yeah, sure, why not?
Yeah,
Jimmy Garoppolo,
sure.
Jimmy G got 2 fucking rings, bro.
I got my rings.
Yep.
That's basically all we got to say about that. The next game, Panthers versus Bucks, the NFC South matchup, du jour of the week. The Panthers win in Kelvin Benjamin's last game in Carolina.
Yep. And I thought it was certainly going to be a better game than we got, but Jameis Winston could not figure out how to not throw it to the defense.
Yeah, when you're throwing borderline 50% with 2 interceptions, no touchdowns, and just over 200 yards passing, that's not a lot to talk about. To be fair, I still don't know how Carolina's winning. Again, another one of these situations. If your running back is your top wide receiver and your quarterback is your top running back, what is your team doing?
I guess technically they're playing. They're playing football, I guess.
They're 5-3 and they're 4-1 on the road, which is incredible. It also means don't pay for home game tickets.
Right.
But
yeah, the Panthers are kind of in this weird area right now where they're having kind of an identity crisis. They can't decide whether or not they want Cam Newton to be more of a protected pocket passer or if they want him to slam home. But the only time they seem to be winning football games is when they just let him run the damn ball. And Christian McCaffrey is really showing to be a pretty inefficient rusher, but God, man, he is a threat out of that backfield.
I was going to say squirrely on the other things.
Oh, absolutely.
But then at that point, if you're just the out of the backfield guy, you quickly become Tavon Austin. Mm-hmm. And people are like, okay, Tavon Austin is here. They're going to run an end around.
Right. But they're still lining them up and handing them the ball. But
right.
Pretty much.
It seems like they should stop doing that at this point.
Like, just make him a slot receiver. Fuck it.
Other people have made perfectly sound transitions.
He's already doing it. He's just lining up off the line of scrimmage.
Not a lot to say about this one. Carolina continues to win enough games to definitely threaten. I guess at this point they're in a fight against the Saints to see who actually comes out of the NFC South. So going from like two kind of milquetoast, like mashed potatoes with no butter or pepper or anything, and like just some white rice ass games. Let's talk about the Texans and the Seahawks.
Yeah.
And
now that's some damn football, boy.
That's a spicy one right there. That's a hot wing.
Did you know that this is Russell Wilson's first 400-plus yard game in the NFL?
So he shares his first over 400-plus yard game with a rookie who threw for over 400 yards?
Yep. It was the quarterback shootout that we all love to see in today's NFLs. They were dropping bombs all over the place. There were dramatic interceptions and possession changes and crazy ass end zone touchdowns, and
this is some 2012 like Pat Saint shit right here.
Right, like, and man, does Deshaun Watson look good right now.
Yeah, I was looking at both of these and Russell Wilson not super efficient on his passing, Deshaun Watson slightly more so. But when you think about the fact that on 26 completions, Wilson threw for 452 yards, and on 19 completions, Deshaun Watson threw for 402. Mm-hmm. Like, that's insane.
Yeah, that's...
DeAndre Hopkins. Both teams had two 100-yard wide receivers. Both teams had a wide receiver that caught 2 touchdowns. Mm-hmm. DeAndre Hopkins went for 224 yards on 8 receptions. Like, Houston even had 142 rushing yards. Most of them were from Deshaun Watson, but...
Right. Man's a scrambling fool. But, like, yeah, it's crazy. It's games like this that really remind me why I love watching premier football players. Like, Russell Wilson's one of those guys where, like we've previously alluded to, he's not a huge numbers guy, but he's an efficient passer that's mobile and plays behind his defense. But when he needs to, he can turn it on, man. And this rookie, Deshaun Watson coming out swinging at a Super Bowl winning offense and a Super Bowl winning defense, and he's lighting them up, and they don't have any answer for him. It was so bad that at the end of the game, Richard Sherman said, this Seattle defense has played the best of the best, and this was probably the most difficult quarterback they've ever had to defend.
Yeah.
And this is his sixth game in the NFL as a starter, fifth or sixth game in the NFL as a starter.
It's definitely a compliment.
Oh, absolutely. From one of the best cornerbacks to ever play the game. You know, Russell Wilson pretty much told him, like, dude, you keep doing what you're doing and you're going to fucking kill it. You know, you still got to tidy some things up. Still a rookie, you know, holds onto the ball a little long. He got sacked a fair amount of times. 3 picks, you know, can't hurt him for those 3 picks. He was trying to keep up in a shootout with one of the best quarterbacks in the league. You know, some of those balls are going to get a little errant.
Deshaun Watson threw for like a quarter of his yards so far this season in this game.
In this single game, yeah. And
I'm sorry, not to get too far ahead, but really this just makes me excited for Texans-Rams in 2 weeks.
Oh, totally. Yeah, it's these Texans have slowly been ramping up to this game, where we saw flashes of that shootout potential with them. You know, they have good receivers on their end. You know, picking up Will Fuller, having DeAndre Hopkins. Their running game, Lamar Miller is a solid back. They can move the ball, and they can move the ball well, and that defense is still a solid defense. It was a culmination of pretty much what they've been trying to build around Deshaun Watson for this game. And the moment they put him up against Russell Wilson and they started going at each other's throats, you could really see how high the ceiling can be for this quarterback.
Yeah, and I keep bringing up how I don't think Philly is as good as their record is. I don't think the Texans are as bad as their record is. If you look at their schedule, the games that they lost opening day against the Jaguars, which is weird and is one of those fluke games, but the Jags always have at least one of those.
Sure.
Also, it was literally Deshaun Watson's first game,
Yep.
So, you know, what are you going to do? Their second loss against the Patriots, 36-33. It's pretty close.
That was the first game where we got a flash of what Deshaun Watson can do, because he got into a shootout with Tom Brady. Like, he threw for 300-plus yards that game for, like, 2 touchdowns or something.
Yeah, lost to the Chiefs, 42-34, and then this game. So 2 of the games that they lost were against, like, recent Super Bowl teams.
Or like, the premier team in the AFC.
Right, or right now the premier team in the AFC, which they lost by a little bit more. But it's like 3 points to 2 Super Bowl contenders who went up against each other.
Yep.
And, you know, and then the team that was supposed to be the best out of the AFC this year, and the Jags again. Mm-hmm. And they've traded, you know, losses and wins back and forth this whole season. But, you know, I look at this team and they could be 6-1.
Oh, totally. Absolutely. And the other thing that really made this game difficult, and something you got to understand, is, you know, they were playing in Seattle. Seattle is a very, very hard place to play. I mean, there's a reason why Seattle is consistently ending seasons with, like, 1 loss at home or undefeated at home. Mm-hmm. It's a very difficult stadium to play in. And, you know, it's one of those positions where if you take Deshaun Watson and somebody that has had limited exposure up to this point to this offense, and now he's having to run this offense in this you know, environment where you can barely hear the man in front of you, let alone communicating to your wideouts and stuff when you're calling audibles or reading defenses and all that fun stuff. It's just so impressive to me that you can still handle the offense as a rookie that efficiently, to where not only do you look good, like, you make the players around you look good. Like, you made, like, DeAndre, that's the best we've seen DeAndre Hopkins be in a solid year. The whole team was elevated on the back of Deshaun Watson, and that's something that the Texans have really been missing. You know, so I 100% agree with you. They're not nearly as bad as that record says. They're gonna come back and make some moves in that division by the end of the season.
I think they've definitely got a shot. So we've got a couple more games. Let's talk about the Dallas Cowboys and the Washington Redskins and this NFC East fight. Ezekiel Elliott went for 150 yards and 2 touchdowns on 33 carries, so not the most efficient night, but hopefully he enjoyed it because he won't be back until the middle of December.
Right. Hopefully that's the last we'll see of Ezekiel Elliott until almost the playoffs.
Dak Prescott looked like Mitch Trubisky.
Yeah, very game manager-esque.
Yeah, very, not even 150 yards and almost no passes.
Hey, Zeke's doing all the work. Don't turn the ball over. Aye, Cap.
Des Bryant has the stats of a high schooler. Meanwhile, at least for Washington receiving, Jamison Crowder, 9 receptions, 13 targets, 123 yards. Not bad for, a loss.
Nope, not teabag. It's games like this, minus the interception. It's games like this that really remind me why Kirk Cousins can go to any other team and they want to argue about making him a franchise quarterback. It amazes me. Well, I mean, you got Tyrod. You don't need Kirk Cousins. But it amazes me that Washington is so taking such a hard stance and not. I mean, they're already paying him a bajillion fucking dollars because they keep franchise tagging him. So I don't know what Washington's going to really do when Kirk Cousins finally leaves, because he's going to leave.
I mean, it certainly seems like it at this point, especially either he's going to leave or he's going to become the highest paid quarterback in the league, because that's basically what I would do is like, all right, you guys want to keep jerking this around, get ready to get met with like real hostile terms.
Yep.
Because by the time he gets out of there, it's not like he's going to be a restricted free agent where they get to, match offer sheets or anything like that.
Right.
And then he's got to sign it. It's, as far as I know, he's going to walk out an unrestricted free agent and just be like, all right,
who wants me?
How'd Jimmy Garoppolo go the first 2 weeks of 2018? Not good. He broke everything. Not records, just all of the bones. Okay, you want me to come play for the Niners?
Yep. Hey, how much does Matt Stafford make again? Pay me more than that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Hey, Baltimore, I hear Joe Flacco, he gets hit in the head every once in a while. And this other guy, his name's Mallet. Is he doing the hitting? What's going on? You need a quarterback?
Yeah, but as far as the game's concerned, it was, I wouldn't necessarily say standard Dallas affair because we're used to seeing more production out of Dak Prescott, but it was about what you'd expect from at least the running game, and the passing game definitely didn't do anything to hurt it.
Yeah.
So, and obviously defensive touchdowns help.
Yeah. Yeah, they certainly are not a negative.
Yeah, I think if Washington was able to get something going on the ground to where they could take a little weight off of Kirk Cousins, that game probably would have been closer than it was.
Probably. But in the meantime, we see the Redskins kind of fluctuate again, and we see yet another division where somebody has risen to the top and everybody else is like, I want to be the second best, not paying attention to the fact that they've got an entire league to play against.
Right.
It's like, yeah, I mean, none of you guys are going to take a dive, but it's one of those conversations where it's like, all right, so the Eagles are making it out of the NFC East and the Giants aren't, so one of these teams has to win eventually, I guess.
Yep.
But will they even make the playoffs?
Exactly. It's like is tight. It's so difficult predicting wildcard teams, and I don't see anybody from that division really grabbing an NFC wildcard slot at this point. Obviously things are subject to change, but like you said, they got to play the rest of the league. They can't just sit there and keep headbutting each other for second and third best, but still come out at the end of the year with a 9-7 record. There's other teams in the NFC that want that spot, and they're certainly going to make a more convincing argument than Dallas or Washington have been doing.
2 more games left. This one is Pittsburgh and Detroit.
So Matthew Stafford, kind of in a sense proving why he's the highest paid quarterback in the NFL.
That's a lot of yards.
Yeah, no, he had a good game. No touchdown passes though. That's a shame. They actually didn't find the end zone at all, I believe. I think all 15 points came off of field goals. So that's cool. Yep, definitely all 15 points came off of field goals.
Yeah, if you're the fantasy kicker who owns yourself on your fantasy team, that's awesome.
Yeah, good for you, man. So most of the game was relatively average, especially on the Detroit Lions side. But the big breakaway story is Juju Smith-Schuster. Who is he, you ask? Well, no one knows, but we certainly know him now after his 97-yard touchdown and his 193 yards on 7 receptions.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, he came out of fucking nowhere. As soon as they were just like, hey, as soon as they pretty much pulled up, shifted everyone up due to some disciplinary action that occurred in Pittsburgh, Juju Smith-Schuster was just like, this is my time, this is my opportunity. The dude's fast, he has hands, he can get open, and he proved it against, not a great defense.
Antonio Brown who?
Yeah, right, exactly. Antonio Brown, he made Antonio Brown's night look pedestrian.
Yeah.
And we're talking about the same Antonio Brown that's on pace for 1,600 yards and has like 90 million receptions this year already.
You think Antonio Brown's mad at him because he's like, yo, you could have let me get like 100 at least?
Yeah, fuck you. Like, I was 30 yards short, ass.
And Juju Smith is like, I can give you 30 yards. You can have it. I will still be over 150.
Right. To put a little bit of something into perspective, Juju Smith-Schuster before this game had somewhere in the ballpark of like 250 receiving yards. So he almost doubled his total receiving yards in a single game.
Yeah, and he's a second round pick from this year. So
he's turned some heads. I think he's kind of cemented his place. We'll see how long they go to him, but I think he's made a convincing case to be the number 2 option in Pittsburgh.
Ben Roethlisberger's like, he's in press conferences like, well, maybe I don't have it anymore. And Smith-Schuster's just sitting on the side like, yeah, motherfucker, maybe if you threw it to me, you'd have it for a little bit longer.
Right, like, come on, bro. Like, but that's not a lie, man. Like, fucking Ben Roethlisberger only threw for 317 yards, almost 200 of them to one guy.
Yep.
So that's actually a very compelling thing. Like Ben Roethlisberger, you look at his stats and it's like, hey, 17 out of 31, 217 yards, threw a pick, but whatever, they won the game. He threw a touchdown. That's a pretty average day for a solid quarterback, especially on somebody that has a high-powered offense like Pittsburgh does. And then you look down and it's like, oh, he threw almost all of those yards to one guy. I'm starting to see a trend with Pittsburgh, and that's he only throws that many yards to a guy.
Yeah. All of Ben Roethlisberger's fingers are broken, but he's the controller where only that one button works, and it's like, okay, who's in that route right now because they're getting the ball.
X always gets the ball. Whoever's lined up at X is getting the ball.
All right, so arguably, probably now the most important matchup, because we've already done the Oakland-Kansas City game, is Kansas City Broncos.
Let me get back on my gloat train. Hold on. Where are my pants?
Yeah, well, the Broncos are also a losing team now, so I don't, is there that much to gloat about?
They're a losing team because of their offense. Kansas City Chiefs still successfully put up, a decent amount of points on one of the best defenses in the league. But what really saved Kansas City's ass is defensive touchdowns. Because Alex Smith was just not having it this game. He threw a touchdown to Travis Kelce, and it was beautiful. But he was under 50%, and he only threw for 200 yards. And those are bad numbers. And Kareem Hunt was stifled in the running game, but still was able to have, decent production. As far as total yardage, he wasn't getting much per carry.
Oh, he broke his 100 yards from scrimmage streak.
Yep, he's officially done with the 100 yards from scrimmage streak. But one of the best defenses in the league will do that to you. But Travis Kelce, man.
Time to cut him.
Travis Kelce, pretty much making another very strong case that he's the best tight end in the league whenever Gronk's injured. Which is all the time. So Travis Kelce is pretty much the best tight end in the league.
I was gonna say you can probably get rid of that whenever Gronk is injured part at this point.
Yeah. Travis Kelce.
It's probably just the best tight end in the league.
Travis Kelce is an oversized wide receiver. That's all that motherfucker is, and I love him. And he busted out some sick moves in the end zone.
I did see his ridiculous moves.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't know if you're good at that or
that's what the suburbs of Cleveland, Ohio teaches you.
Yeah, I was like, those are very white but very well executed.
Yeah, still looks smooth.
So I don't know. And it's also funny just like watching him stare at the cornerback or the safety or whoever for a second and then start doing that shit. And I was like literally he got done with it. And then I watched the slow-mo replay of his end zone dance. And I was like, you could literally put as many foam balls all over him as you want and motion capture that whole thing. And when you put it into Madden, it would look fake.
Yeah.
That looked like some wire rigged shit where it's just like, yeah, now make them dance. This is our new slash dance emote for fucking Madden.
Yeah,
It's
and
like,
that's when I first saw it too. I was like, I thought it looked the way his body was like jutting back and forth, and it looked very odd. And then I realized what dance he was doing, and I was like, I pretty much had a similar thought process to you. It was like, is he good at this, or am I too white to know what good dancing is?
I was going to say, so what was he doing? Because I also had some sense in my head where I was like, this is clearly from something.
Oh, dude, fuck if I know. A friend of mine texted me and was just like, so Travis Kelce busted out the such and such dance, and I was just like, oh, that's cool, man.
Okay.
I don't. Yeah, beyond me, man. I'm a white kid from the suburbs. I don't know how all that stuff goes on.
Could be worse. Could be the Katy Perry thing, which apparently is. I don't even know where that came from.
I fucking
internet.
Yeah.
I got old at some point and stopped paying attention to new music. So if it ain't the new Doomtree album, I don't care. Or some new Vince Staples. I guess I care a little bit, but only when that shit's hard. So anyways, talking about this game, I don't know, that's kind of about it. Like, Kansas City played well, Denver
didn't.
Slightly less so.
And now we're going to see Brock Osweiler taking the reins of the Denver Broncos once again. Did you ever think you were going to see that again?
Like, how far back do I have to go to say no? Like this season when he got picked back up by before I knew he was on the team? No, I didn't see that was happening again. Apparently he's been on the team since the beginning of the season. I didn't know that, but yeah, that makes some sense. I could see that. Doesn't surprise me that much. It's almost like the dude won a bunch of games in like a playoff game while Peyton Manning was hurt. Like he's totally capable.
Well, I just meant more in the sense of, Trevor Siemian also played very well last year. So were we expecting Trevor Siemian to be this poor this season, and also expecting Brock Osweiler to have to take over for that team once again? Especially when they still have Paxton Lynch just rotting away on the sideline right now.
Right, and what I'm saying is I don't even see Trevor Siemian as necessarily being that good of an option, but Brock Osweiler is, to a degree, a proven product for the Denver Broncos. So, yeah, I totally get it. He might turn around and completely shit the bed, but he might also turn around and get them back to the playoffs again somehow. So, we'll have to see. Tim Tebow was also not a good quarterback. Guess what he did? Won games. So,
well, that's what happens when you play for the Broncos.
Yeah.
The defense will win some for you.
Yes, very much so.
Like, not even in that sense of, the offense did well, but the defense really carried them. No, the defense will straight up win you a Super Bowl.
Shout out Joe Flacco.
Right. Shout out Denver.
Shout out early Tom Brady.
Yeah. Shout out Peyton Manning.
Well, yeah, in his broken arm season throwing year old looking.
Yep. Von Miller. Yeah, Von Miller's like strip sacking ass.
Okay, so we talked about the trade deadline. We talked about briefly Zeke's suspension, resuspension, the suspension on his truck. He got trucked, and now he is stuck on the sideline for a while. Do we have anything else we have pressing, interesting?
Well, the NFLPA filed a motion for injunction for Elliott. He's still fighting that suspension, so we'll see.
Okay.
Yeah, of course, Gordon being reinstated gives me a sign of hope.
Yep. We also talked about that.
Yep. Yeah, I'm just going over the things we already talked about. Ooh, excuse me. Ow. Oh, gas. Talked about that stuff. Talked about that. No, that pretty much wraps it up.
Yeah, I think we've basically got everything. We, start off with some news this time so we don't have it sitting there on the back end, but I feel like we got a decent conversation out of it.
Oh, sure.
Little discuss.
Well, you definitely got some, a decent rant.
Yeah.
If y'all are into that kind of thing. Dude,
I think
that was exhausting, but I felt so good afterwards.
yeah, there was a lot less pauses, so it felt like you actually had something to say other than just like slogging through the trenches for once.
No, like I said, this is the first time. This is the first time in my entire lifetime of being a very, very long time Browns fan where I've been genuinely disgusted with the Browns. So,
And
if that says anything.
this is the first time in ever as being a Bills fan that I can say genuinely, I think we're going to the playoffs.
Hell yeah, boy. I'm disgusted. Y'all are going to the playoffs. What have we learned? Don't trust anything.
Yeah, next year it'll be the Browns, maybe.
Lord, that would be the apocalypse, be the end of the world.
Well, it could be right around the corner, but for right now, we have to turn a corner and end this podcast. It's been November the 1st, 2017, and this has been the Fourth and Wrong podcast. Say goodbye, Keith.
Goodbye, Keith.
Asshole.
At least Hugh Jackson's coached the motherfucker before, and he likes him. Hugh Jackson likes A.J. McCarron.
I can't stop seeing Wolverine every time you say Hugh Jackson. Just black Wolverine.
Well, see, now I'm not going to be able to stop saying it.
Sorry.
You fucker.
Yep, that's me.
Tom Brady starts coming out with this almost cultish fucking TB12 method shit, and he's like, "Nah, I'm going to play till I'm 60." And then he's going out and playing.
Wait. He's going to get tuberculosis 12 times, and that's how he's going to play until he's 45?
Absolutely. That's what it is. Have you read the book?
No. What's reading?
Fair enough. Anyways.
I talk into a microphone.
That's not even the same. Not even remotely close to the same. And that's bullshit. You read notes.
What?